Good morning and welcome to the May CTE State Advisory Committee meeting. I'm Harmony Little, serving as your chair with the Kentucky Community and Technical College System. I want to start out by doing, we've done welcomes and then we'll go around and do introductions via roll call. I'm going to go down the list that I have here. Is Representative Steve Riley with us? How about Senator Jimmy Higdon? Beth Brindley?
Here.
Good morning.
Good
Matthew
morning.
Whitaker? Jeff Jones? Mike Stone?
Here.
Darlene Zybart? Drew Graham?
I'm sorry, I'm here. It took me a moment to get my mic off. I apologize.
No worries. Good to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Erica King. I'm here on behalf of Drew and Kentucky Farm Bureau. Thank you. Shelley Goodwin?
Here, good morning.
Hey. Steve Johnson? Debbie Dennison?
Here.
Morning.
Morning.
Paul Mike Miller?
Here.
Morning. John Sanders? Eva Probus? Ben Williams? Benjamin? I think we have a quorum. So next, I will entertain a motion.
Here also.
Oh,
I missed my name.
Has anybody else joined us since I called your name?
Can you hear me?
You got Jimmy Higdon, right?
Yes, sir. We got you. Thanks for
you.
being here.
Can anybody hear me?
Yes.
Hey, Harmon, it's John Sanders. I just called in on my phone. Our internet went out here at school, so as soon as it gets back up, I'll join on the Teams there.
John, thanks for being so flexible. We appreciate you.
Sure.
Okay. Anyone else who joined after I called your name? Then I would like to move on to entertain a motion for the approval of the minutes from November 16, 2022. They were shared with you in an email. Hopefully you had time to review. Is there a motion to accept the minutes?
So moved.
This is
Thank you, Commissioner Brindley. Is there a second?
second.
Can you please state your name for the record?
Oh, sorry. This is Darlene Zybart.
Thank you. And since we have so many virtual, I'm going to try to do this by acclamation and see if we have anybody opposed. Okay, the minutes passed by acclamation. Thank you so much. I will turn it over to Beth Hargis to give us an update from OCTE and staffing.
Thank you. We appreciate you all being with us today. We do have some new faces in our office for this meeting. We have added a new data manager, Ms. Holly Tracy, and she's actually sitting to my right. We are so glad to have her. We have also partnered with the communications office within KDE, and we are kind of sharing Caleb Bates. And Caleb is a real godsend for us because he's going to be going around the state and doing some stories for us for CTE and really helping us promote and get the word out. We have added a new business and marketing consultant, Kathy Hain. We also have a new Skills USA state advisor, Kim Woodall. And we are, she hasn't started yet, but we are also happy to announce Amanda Boggs, their new STEM integration consultant. Okay, then next, we're still looking for some people. So we still have a assistant data manager position open, a middle school career study position, a health sciences consultant, and a computer science consultant. And of course, a lot of these changes, it's that time of year, the end of the year. So those that are considering retiring are doing so. And so that's why we do have 4 open. And we hope to be able to conduct interviews shortly and get those filled. So thank you.
Thank you for that update. Tom Thompson, you're going to give us an update on the career readiness.
So in my division, we've had our CTSO events, and this is kind of just a highlight of most of those. So DECA has completed their state and their national student organizations or conferences. FCCLA has completed the state conference, and they'll have nationals in July, Denver, Colorado. HOSA has completed their state and will complete their national conference in June. FBLA national conferences in June. They've completed state. Field USA just completed state and will be in Atlanta, Georgia in June. PSA is happily going to be, the national conference will be in Kentucky this time, in Louisville, and they have completed their state conference recently. FFA has completed their state, or will complete their state in June. And then they'll have their national conference in November in Indianapolis, Indiana. I wanted to kind of update you on the membership. If you notice on the chart, we're pretty proud of a lot of growth in these student organizations. If you notice, that first column is pre-pandemic, and then 1920, the next two kind of hit where that pandemic is, and you can see we took a huge hit on some of those. And we thought we were going to have a struggle coming out of this to grow, but really, if you look at the numbers, some of them have doubled. TSA has almost tripled. Now, we've been spending some of our recovery funds to try to grow these coming out of the pandemic with issue. Some of those numbers are not necessarily due to that. Some of those numbers are due to the fact that Perkins 5 requires that CTE pathways be aligned to a national CTSO. And so that's the reason some of those numbers have gone up, because in order to receive Perkins funding, you have to have a complete pathway aligned to that. So the next slide is just a graphical representation of what we just looked at. And I thought it was kind of neat to be able to compare each of those in that manner. So hopefully you can look at that when you have some time there. Another thing that's going on in my division is the FFA leadership training camp. At the last meeting, we talked about starting to, or we were going to start revamping some of the cabins on the campus. So right now we're working on 5 of them. They're right in the middle of it. They should be buttoning that up in the next little bit, I hope, because kids will be in there within the next few weeks. And the camps start to come to life right now. The mowers are running, weed eaters, and we've got some seasonal staff that's already in there. So on this particular slide on the left, you see one of the older cabins, and this picture probably does justice, but they're just in need of repair. They're run down. They don't have insulation in them. They've got no heat and air other than just window units. And then the new unit on the right, you can see that it has metal siding and roofing. The next slide has some pictures of the interiors of them. They also have mini split units inside of them so that they'll have heat and air. We're really trying to turn this into a year-round facility, and you just couldn't do that the way these were before. On the left, you see that picture of the interior, what they looked like before the remodels. That center picture is actually a picture of one of the new cabins. And then on the right is one of the refurbished cabins. So we kept those old beams that are in there, and that old side roofing that's inside, or the ceiling inside of it is still all the original. So it still has that charm of the original camp, but it'll have new flooring in it. We pulled up all that old asbestos tile that was on the floors, pulled that out of there. It has insulation, all new electrical, and then HVAC in each unit. And on this next slide, just some general division work that we're on. We've been working on law and public safety standard revisions, and those will go live in this fall. Marketing and business administration, or MBA research, and the Office of Career and Technical Education are partnering to work on supply chain management pathway standards. So it's called a futuring panel, but basically MBA research and our office will pull in a lot of local businesses, and we'll look at some current supply chain management standards that are out there nationally, but then the local folks will put their 2 cents in and say, these are the ones that we really value. And then after they identify all the standards that they want, then we'll pull teachers in and align those to courses and then the courses to the pathway itself. And it's something that, some schools are already doing some of this, and we do have 4 courses on the books, but they're not in a state level pathway. So we've been kind of working on that, excited about that. New STEM integration consultant, we've already mentioned, and then we're in the process of hiring those other 3 folks in my division. And then one last thing that I'll share before I turn it over to Linda is last year we used some of our recovery funds for CTSO trainings, specifically for new advisors, or advisors that really don't have a CTSO yet, but we had that training and it was a hit. And so we are going to do that again this year. And I went ahead and just listed all of them because everybody has said that they were interested in doing that. So that's kind of where our division is right now. And so I will turn it over to Linda Jackson. She is our project manager for those recovery funds, and she has done a fabulous job. I can't say enough about her. She is the brainchild or the leader of the CTE showcase, and she's done a really fabulous job with it. So, Linda.
So we've been very blessed to have the ESSER funds. You hate coming off a pandemic, but having the additional funds to support. And it fell right during the time of Perkins 5, where we were saying to every school, you have to have a CTSO if you have this pathway. So this enabled us to use some of these funds to train the new advisors, to provide travel funds for our CTSO state advisors to go out and visit the new schools and do that one-on-one face-to-face interaction with them. So those funds have been really used in a variety of ways. But one of the things we did last year was we funded and used some of the ESSER funds to have CTE showcases. We ended up we had 2 showcases, and the premise behind the showcase was to highlight the great things that are happening in career and technical education across the state. So we did a competitive mini grant process where a school could apply for $5,000 if they just wanted to attend the Capital Showcase. But if they were willing to also come to the Kentucky School Board Association meeting in February, then they could apply for $7,000 to cover transportation costs. We had 68 applications, and we ended up funding right around 30. Okay, so 32 schools were represented of the 68 applications. Thanks. So some of the celebrations that we found, and I'm not going to read this PowerPoint to you, was that the displays that the schools came up with and used the funds, they used the funds to really highlight what was going on in the particular school. So the displays were outstanding. They used the money appropriately. And we found that the money that we allocated for this was sufficient, because I sent out a follow-up email and they felt like the $5,000 and $7,000 was sufficient to cover their displays. The students at the Capitol got to meet Governor Beshear. He kicked it off, got to take some pictures with him. And for some of the students, this was the first time they had ever been to the Capitol. So it was a real event for them. At KSBA, they announced the schools at the luncheon. So the students got to walk across the stage. They got recognized. And their school or district that was represented there got to also stand up as the students walked across the stage. So it made both the district and the school very proud. The students were very prepared. You could tell that they had really rehearsed and were ready to answer questions about their pathway, the programs that they were taking, the certifications that they would get at the end. And some of the students got to meet their state representatives at the Capitol. Okay. So some of the ideas that we are considering moving forward, we are going to have another series or showcases this late fall, early spring. One of the things that probably moving forward is we did not get the turnout from the legislators that we had hoped. When we initially, this takes months to plan. And so when I initially met with the Capitol, they had a starting time very different than what happened for the legislators at the end. So we didn't get a lot of legislators. We had a foot traffic, but not a lot of legislators. So that was a disappointment for some of the schools. A lot of the schools on their post survey felt like that KSBA was more impactful than the Capitol, that they got more foot traffic from school board members, superintendents, central office staff than they did at the Capitol. Also, we had intended to fund only 20, but we had so many great applications that we funded more, which made the space very crowded at the Capitol. We have much more space at KSBA for the students to spread out their display. So one of the things that I would like to just take a couple of minutes to do is to kind of give your all's ideas on what you think would be the next version of a CTE showcase. We're very open to ideas. I've been doing some brainstorming sessions with some of the folks inside of CTE. I've been meeting individually with some of the CTSO state directors, asking them what we should do. So I just wanted to open this up to see if you all have any great ideas on what we can do next year for the showcase.
I don't have a great idea.
Well, yes, you do, Mike. You always have a great idea.
But my comment is that if you're looking at target to General Assembly, the 2024 session will be more normal than this past year was. It'll be a budget session. They'll meet that first week to organize, and then they'll come back in early in February to meet through. So it won't have that added delay that they threw on us late for this past year. So.
And Mike was a great resource. And Mike and I kind of coordinated with his CTSO leadership day and the Capitol visit. So we kind of combined the two, and he was an outstanding resource and knew who to contact. And so I appreciate, Mike, all the help that you provided. So, okay, yes.
No, I was just going to ask if anybody online had any suggestions for Linda for next year's showcase.
This is Jimmy Higdon. I was going to jump in if that's okay.
Please.
By the way, the General Assembly next year, it's our budget session. That's correct. And it's a 60-day session. So we start that first Tuesday in January and run all the way through April 15th, except for 2 weeks toward the end at the veto day. So we don't have that month off like we do in the short session at the beginning. So and you know, if you can plan the showcase early March before you get in those last 2 weeks where it gets really crazy, it would be beneficial. One thing that that I think would be, what if these students did a YouTube presentation also of their project and post that, and we could, those who don't get to attend, or we have a student there, we want to see what they did, we could go back and see it on YouTube, because there is a chance that we would miss them when they're at the Capitol.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Higdon. Any other thoughts from our virtual attendees? I was going to say something similar. If there was a way to maybe give it a bit of a virtual presence, either to highlight those, who are selected, but even if maybe there's an intermediate step for those who don't get to showcase. And I don't know if you either make it, like a TikTok competition, or like Senator Higdon suggested, YouTube, but there you probably could have some presence, and then you could create a hashtag for it, so students could search by it. And then I wonder if there's a way that you maybe recognize the schools that get to participate. You either create an emblem or something that they can put on their own webpage, or they can have some kind of recognition that they were part of that.
Thank you.
That it looks like you have a lot of a great and solid foundation to build on. Great. Any other thoughts on this for Linda? Thanks for that great report.
Thank you.
Next, we have Larry Garrity to give us an update on the continuous improvement.
Hello, everyone. Just want to give an update on our area technology centers. So we have 50 state-operated area technology centers. I want to give an update on some good news from some of them. We have great things going across the state. As you know, school's wrapping up, but there's been some great opportunities for students this year in regards to CTSO, work-based learning, different PBL projects, and just making great connections for students with dual credit, things of that nature. So I want to highlight some of our schools. So this is a example of Murray Callaway County Area Technology Center. They have a technical English 4 course that is a collaboration between Callaway County High School and Murray Callaway County ATC. And these are some example of projects where students market their projects during the second annual marketplace event. The course focuses on project-based learning in lieu of traditional language course. The components include research, writing, marketing, design, and creating. So you can see where students are. These are seniors that are working with a high school English teacher to integrate their English skills along with their career pathway skills and producing products and doing research and presenting those. So it's just a great opportunity for students to take those skills they're learning on the academic side and integrate it into their technical pathway, and then present that and share that with folks in their district, in their area. That's a great example of that kind of a project. Lee County ATC, this is in the eastern region. Lee County, this is their 6th tiny house they have built. We have 6 ATCs in each region that are making tiny houses. This is a great interdisciplinary project for students from different areas like carpentry, electricity, HVAC, drafting. And these students are working together to design tiny houses to meet the needs of people in their communities. So Lee County has been a very strong partner in their communities, and this is the 6th tiny house they've created and designed that will eventually be auctioned off their community. Monroe County HCC in the central region, which is down south central, they have partnered with Kingsford Charcoal Manufacturing with their manufacturing student programs and the health science program. They had an opportunity to tour the facility, learn how their process works there, learn about job opportunities. In addition to that, the health science students were able to actually work with the employees and provide health checks for them and practice their skills and provide some checks for those employees that allow those students to practice those skills with real actual people as opposed to a mannequin. So it's a great opportunity for those students in Monroe County HCC. Logan County Career Technical Center, which is in the West region, they partnered with Russellville Rural and Logan Aluminum Fire Department, and they learned how to extricate a person from a vehicle in lieu of an accident. And so they have a great partnership with Logan Aluminum at Logan County CTC. We appreciate that. And this was just a great opportunity for students to see something hands-on and get some feedback from those industry partners on how this can be beneficial to them in the future, their future careers. Those are some quick updates on ATCs.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Larry. Reagan, what's the latest on legislative and initiatives?
We are several weeks out from the 2023 legislative session. I'm only going to truly hit one bill today that directly affected the Office of Career and Technical Education moving forward. It also affects our work-based learning initiatives in the state. As we know, multiple partners are working to increase work-based learning and the quality of work-based learning. Senate Bill 25 of this legislative session addressed our accountability system It was a continuation of Senate Bill 59 from the 2022 legislative session, which we discussed at our November meeting. Senate Bill 25 added language and provided some clarity or some detail to the work-based learning indicator. Senate Bill 25 added that indicator, which included apprenticeships, cooperative, and internship courses, are not limited to being offered as a high school course and are not limited to take place during the regular school day, week, or year. And so what that boils down to is adding more opportunities for students by limiting it to a high school course. That means the student had to have room in their schedule to take that course. And so our legislators saw an opportunity to make sure that we include students that don't have an opportunity to take that during the regular scheduled school day, but are perhaps involved in a work-based learning experience on the weekends or over the summer that does relate to their coursework as well. And then effective immediately, even if it is associated with a high school course, any hours at any time of day on any day of the year can count towards their requirement for post-secondary readiness. Those experiences, especially those that are not associated with the course, must still be aligned with a credential or associate degree, and they must be approved by our Board of Education after receiving input from our local Superintendent's Advisory Council. So what this means is that the passage of Senate Bill 25 will cause us to amend our regulation for accountability, the Kentucky Board of Education's regulation. And so we will be presenting this to our board in February. We anticipate that it will pass because we're just aligning it to statutory language. And so the following are measures of post-secondary readiness through the work-based learning indicator: completing a Kentucky Department of Education approved or Labor Cabinet approved apprenticeship. That refers to our track program, our Tech Ready apprentices for careers in Kentucky. And then the next piece is successfully completing a Kentucky Board of Education approved co-op or internship that is aligned with a credential or associate degree and which provides a minimum of 300 hours of on-the-job work experience. So we had a work group that consisted of experts on work-based learning and how it was implemented in schools that landed on that 300-hour requirement. And so initially what this means is that the Office of Career and Technical Education, in partnership with our Division of School Data Services, has created and has now released a new tab in Infinite Campus for schools to record co-op courses and internship courses in which students have met that 300-hour requirement. So that's gone live. We've provided guidance to schools on how to import that data. Students have until June 30th of this year to continue to accumulate hours, and then schools have until July 31st of this year to import the data for those hours in order for that to be included on this current school year's accountability report. Then next, the second piece of it to the new legislation is the Kentucky Board of Education, the Kentucky Department of Education, in collaboration with superintendents that are on our LSAC council, are working to establish minimum criteria for the work-based learning placements that are not associated with a course. And so we've come very far on it, but everything still needs to go through approvals. We need to make sure all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, and then we'll be releasing that information to our school. Great. On the same topic of work-based learning, I'm actually going to tag team Dr. Hargis here. She's going to give a quick overview of kind of the work that we are doing with our Education and Workforce Collaborative.
Thank you, Reagan. We are really excited about this. Deputy Secretary of Education and Labor Cabinet, Beth Brindley, has asked KDE, the Office of Career and Technical Education, to head the development and implementation of a work-based learning ecosystem. So in OCTE, we absolutely understand the relevance of work-based learning for high school students. And according to the data from KY Stats, we know that 1 year out of high school, students that have participated in work-based learning are going to earn higher wages. While secondary students are only a part of the individuals who are going to participate in work-based learning, the benefits are obvious. And so in thinking about an ecosystem, we will be considering the core components necessary for success and the implementation going forward. And we're developing a work group to address the needs of both business and industry and the educational requirements. And we're hoping to bridge any gaps that still exist so that we can provide effectual guidance for continued opportunities. Deputy Secretary Brindley referenced our work-based learning manual in our meeting, and we believe it can play a significant role in this process. And so we hope to have some news regarding this initiative at our fall meeting, and certainly appreciate any comments or questions from our advisory members. And so Deputy Secretary Brindley, since you're on the call, I just wondered if you had anything else that you would like to add regarding this.
First of all, I want to express my appreciation for your willingness to lead the effort associated with the Education and Workforce Collaborative. And the second, I think it's our hope out of this collaboration is that we can really put the employer community at the center, and we can streamline interactions across the education and workforce continuum so that our employers want to be a partner with us and want to stay partners with us in work-based learning, because it is one of the most important components. Employers aren't always, they not only look for the certifications and credentials that we can provide through CTE programs and other programs, but they also look for experience too. And they're being at that, they are the entities that can provide that experience. And so we want to make sure the ecosystem works most effectively for them. So thanks for the opportunity to share those thoughts, and I'm happy to answer any questions if folks have them.
Are there any questions? Well, when you get two bets together, you get a lot accomplished. So thank you. I think my question that I had is, I love this work-based learning manual, and we've looked at it before in this advisory council. But to some of what Larry shared earlier, is there a place to share what others are doing in the space of work-based learning? Is there either a repository of some of the great activities or some of the great opportunities? Because I think, at least what I find when we have these conversations around the table in our office, is it's this great big thing, and there's a lot of things you can do around it, but maybe providing some specific tangible examples can go a long way to sort of help the creative juices, for the lack of another word, for everything that we can count it, especially now when we have this bill available, that the opportunities are not just restricted to school hours.
I think that's a great idea. We don't have a formal collection of those, but I do have one apprenticeship story that I always tell. And so everywhere I go, I fall back on that one. But I think that's a wonderful idea, because we know what's going on. And across the board, I think there's some confusion as to the different types of work-based learning. And of course, then the work-based learning that is part of accountability for the secondary side of it. So I think we have a lot of work to do, and I've made a note of that, because I think that's absolutely worthwhile.
But I mean, there's so many great practices happening, but we don't share them. Then one, people don't necessarily raise their hands and say we have a great practice, but I think we just heard of some today that I would have been like, that's really creative. Just the students doing the health checks or other things like that. And if you're in the field, that's probably what you're thinking about. But also, if you're a new instructor and you're not quite sure where to start, et cetera, it just.
Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, Tom, back to you for a strategic funding work group update.
Yeah, I'll touch base just real quick. I'll see you in a minute. We have talked about our legislative priority, and it's stayed the same for the last couple of advisory meetings, and it is still priority number one. We would be remiss not to thank our General Assembly members again, we can't thank them enough for the historic investment that they provided in the 2022 state budget for career and technical education. I am not going to go into the whole background about that, because this advisory board has heard it before, but going from being able to fund 96 schools to now funding all of them, 316 schools where there is CTE programming, is still incredible. So thank you, Senator Higdon, for your support. Thank every legislator that has a part in it. We find that when we are there everyone's supportive of CTE, and they not only just say that they are supporter, but they actually act on that and they show us. And so we are really excited about going to an equitable unified funding formula that we're working towards for the 2024 budget session. That priority is to sustain that level of funding so that we can continue to fund all schools, no matter the governance or the location of the school, and every student would be funded the same. And also to create a unified formula that incentivizes things we want to see programs doing. So let's reward schools who are doing the right thing on top of making sure that we are funding them at an adequate level. I'm so excited about the positive progress that we really truly have made on this. Our office created a funding work group, an internal funding work group that has really put in a great deal of time. And we want to thank Tom Thompson and Matt Colliff. Matt is our state FFA advisor, but he's also been acting as our funding chair. And we have some great things to share. So I'll turn it over and stop talking now.
All right. Well, so as you all know, we've had sort of this myriad of funding stuff going on forever. ATCs were their own thing, locally operated centers were their own thing, and then local programs basically didn't get any state funding outside of SEEK. And so our questions have been, how do we combine that? How do we make that equitable? We've tried to go at it with the theory, a welding student, whether they're an ATC, a CTC, or a local program, they still cost money. They still cost money for welding gas, and electrodes, equipment, and all the things. And so how do we get to that? And then how do we get, as Reagan said, how do we get an equitable formula, but then also how do we get adequate formula? And how do we also incentivize some things that are good things that drive progress and forward movement? So those have been some of our conversations. We've been all over the board and considered tons of different things, but as you can see on the slide, we sort of landed on this idea of a hybrid calculation that has 60% of base funding based on FTE, because we want to provide that base. If you have students in a class, they cost money. We get that. But we also wanted to incentivize some good things. So 40% of our model is based on incentives that we think are positive. The four incentives that we've really been leaning into and think are positive are these four listed. Now, I would tell you these are all from the high quality indicators of CTE programs. And I know you all talked about that last fall. We originally started out, I was saying we should, all 12 should be incentives. Well, it's hard to incentivize 12 things without things getting washed out. And as you think about what we can measure, what's easy to measure, we looked at these four as the things that we think can make the most difference, drive the most change, and are the easiest to track and easiest to explain. And so all those things matter to schools. So we've landed on four that we are strongly recommending. One is completers. We think having students that are in a pathway for 3 or 4 classes is critical to them getting what they need to be successful, and it's critical ultimately to them being able to move on to post-secondary in that area. The second one is work-based learning. You all just talked about work-based learning. I won't make any more arguments for that than have been made, but obviously we think that's important. Now, we know as we look at the data, we've got lots and lots and lots of room to grow on work-based learning. So we think that's a great thing to incentivize. CTE, dual credit. Again, we see the benefit of that, and so we want to reward schools that are offering that and getting students in that. And then finally, technical skill attainment, whether that's passing an in-program assessment or articulated credit, or it's an approved industry cert. But we want to continue to drive those because we think all those things have value. So we've got 60% of our funding based on attendance, basically 40% will be based on those incentives for schools. I think you can flip the slide down. We've looked at some other things that we've sort of, I mentioned these. We talked about economic disadvantage as a 5th indicator. We ran the data on that and we sort of leaned away from it. There wasn't a huge gain or a huge loss by running economic disadvantage. It just didn't seem to fit what we were trying to do at the end of the day. We've looked at per student incentives versus school and district calculations. We've run lots and lots. Tom and then Jim Woodby here in the department have run thousands of lines of numbers and we have spreadsheets that have columns that go on for days. I don't think I've ever seen a spreadsheet that goes to column ZZ, but we've got them. We've got all kinds of stuff. We also looked at incentive scales and cutoffs and benchmarks and rolling scales. We settled on a scale with incentives that is I call it a sliding scale or a rolling scale. Basically, the school in the state that has the least work-based learning is still eligible for incentive. The school that has the most work-based learning gets the most incentive, but it's a sliding scale. So we originally had I originally put in some arbitrary benchmarks, and then these great smart folks said, well, what are those based on? I said, well, I just had to have some numbers to base them on. But the sliding scale gets us away from arbitrary numbers. And so you can always go up in the system. That's what I really like about it. Then the other thing that we really talked about is we need a process to approve new programs to come into the funding source. So just because Larry wants to add a program, it's great. We're glad he's adding it. But to get in the funding source, it would have to go through an approval process similar to what ATC programs have to go through now to be added. So just be looking at industry data, industry needs, sustainability, all those things to actually enter the funding. I think there's one more slide. So we like get any feedback you all have on this, answer any questions you have about it, and then we can talk a little bit about next steps.
So opening up the floor for the questions that are on the slide, what are your initial thoughts on the funding ideas presented? Or how do you feel about the incentive categories, or what additional thoughts would you like to provide? We'd love to hear what you think.
Can I add additional thought? Jimmy Higdon? One of the things that I think as we talk about incentives and the additional funding for schools is to have a matching program for local buy-in or local match, where a school would put up percentage of money and find someone in the community that would match it. I think it won't work in every community because some communities just don't have the folks that would do a match, but there are communities that would jump at the opportunity to for supplies and equipment do a match for a program with the local school.
Thank you for that feedback. Mr. Sanders?
Yeah, I like the incentive categories a lot. And I think that's great. And I think that gives us a lot to shoot for. And this is just my initial thought, is just a little bit of a concern when it comes to work-based learning. I'm lucky enough to be in Franklin County, and we have lots of employers. Fayette County, Jefferson County, lots of employers. I think when you look at some of the Eastern Kentucky counties, you may look at Leslie County, Clay County, they don't have nearly the opportunities. So I just think that may need to be something that we take into account is locations and availability of work-based learning.
And that's a great point. And we looked at that. When we looked at that, and we didn't look at every school, every district, but we pulled some urban districts that are doing a poor job with work-based learning. We pulled some rural districts that are doing a really good job with it. So as we looked at the data, work-based learning was not necessarily a negative impact on rural community. And I totally agree with what you're saying. Leslie County is a much harder place in theory to do work-based learning than Jefferson. But the data doesn't necessarily prove that out, that especially if you take into account things like internships and the other pieces of work-based learning. So we have looked at that, and we want to continue to look at that in the data. That's a great point. We'll continue to keep in mind as we move forward.
And I'd like to throw in there too. I mean, and John, that was very insightful because we truly thought about that as well. Another thing that we considered was, we don't kind of a hold harmless. We want to incentivize, but we don't want to provide any hardships for schools that are in an area where they may not have access to these things. So we've tried to flesh out all of those and analyze it and just make sure. And we've also considered perhaps a phase-in model of this, where if there wouldn't be a significant hit. And actually, all of the numbers that we've run, it doesn't show a stark difference in the amount of gains or losses that if you took the same dollar amount that we have right now and allocated it based on this funding model, there's not huge divides. So again, we kind of felt like this particular model, and again, as Matt said, we've got the largest Excel spreadsheet you've ever seen, but really, this one seemed to be the most equitable across the board. Ms. Goodwin?
Just another thought kind of related to both rural or lower income areas and work-based learning, the challenges of transportation to and from work-based learning sites. So I don't know if funding, if there are limitations on how funding can be used or if that's an option for funding dollars. But, and I don't know how many folks know this. I actually did, before I came to CAM, my position was a work-based learning coordinator for Shelby County. And that was one of the real challenges that we had to face, even being in a fairly economically, I wouldn't say disadvantaged, but in a pretty good situation. But the rural aspect and folks not having transportation to and from work-based learning opportunities prevented them from participating. So another piece of that need to keep in mind, especially for those not as well populated or disadvantaged communities.
Thank you. That's an excellent point. Excellent. Thank you.
So my memory on this is fuzzy, but at some point when we did New Skills for You, I recall a presentation from one of the other states where they utilized a virtual work-based learning opportunity. I don't know what the costs are associated with it, but in the age of technology and everything, given some of these challenges that have been brought up, smaller communities that may not have the opportunities there or the transportation logistics, may be something worth digging into just to understand, and I don't know if it would take a grant to purchase, the service or whatever it is, but my understanding is that, it's not as robust as a real one, of course, but there is opportunity to either do some job shadowing or other similar type things. So could be a potential opportunity. Anyone else out there in the virtual world? Did you get enough feedback to?
Thank you all very much. We're next steps for us will be to start the process with the General Assembly. As we continue to talk to stakeholder groups, but ultimately the General Assembly has to go along with this and has to fund it. And so those will be conversations that start happening between now and the first of the year when the General Assembly comes back in session. So continue to work forward and hope that we end up. I know this idea of equitable funding has been on the table for at least 10 years. Harmony, you mentioned New Skills for Youth. This was part of the conversation when New Skills for Youth started, and it's taken this long to get here. So we're excited about the opportunities, what this has already done for schools, what it can continue to do as we move forward. So thank you all very much.
About progress, and I think it's really exciting to see the roadmap come out, because when we sat here in the November meeting and looked at, like you said, 7 incentives, it's hard to sort of see what are we going to do with it. So I think you all have done great work, and more good stuff will come.
Thank you all very much.
Right. So we are doing great on schedule. So before I ask about feedback for the fall schedule, I just wanted to open up the floor and see if anybody in the room or online had any updates or information to share that they wanted everybody else to be aware of. We have a taker in the room, Mike.
I wanted to let everybody know that registration as of this morning for the summer program, July 18th to the 21st at the Galt House in Louisville, was 1,512, which is well ahead of any previous pace. I also would like to alert people that Galt House is sold out on Tuesday, the 18th. There is one room left on Wednesday, the 19th. We have secured overflow housing, and we'll make an announcement of that next week. So I would encourage folks, if anybody's been on the fence about attending, that they get the registrations in. We have Chris has literally been stressing herself to try to schedule 329 separate breakout sessions over the course of the 2.5 days. And there is no more room for, oh, I got this great idea. Well, they'll have to save it for 24 because there's no space available right now. Also, and good news, this is for our professional associations that share in the revenue from the CTE meeting place exhibits. We are running 30% ahead of estimated income on that line item. We have 8 booths are left. If you know anybody that wants to reach all the CTE educators through participation in the meeting place, I got 8 booths left, and then it's all gone. And we did restructure the meeting place design to open up more seating and also more food distribution lines to be able to serve people faster and create a nice environment. So that's my update.
Kudos to you and Chris. I think people are ready and wanting to get back in person for stuff. Anyone online have any updates or information they want to share with the good of the order? Then I will move ahead. In discussing this informally in terms of the schedule for fall 23, we have a lot of members that are rotating off. So rather than trying to get a consensus now on what time we want to target in the fall to meet, we think we'll just ask Ms. Baxter to maybe do a doodle poll or seek out for the new membership after we know who they are. So I think if you're sticking around, if you're still on the advisory board, you'll be hearing from us in a couple of months regarding that. So alluding to what I was just saying, we do have a number of folks that are rotating off this year, and their term will end on June 30th. So I just want to express my deep appreciation for you taking the time to serve on this board, provide feedback. You know, everybody around this room take it to heart. They take action on it, and it's really valuable for them to be able to move the work forward. So we're grateful that you do take the time out to participate in this.
Harmony, if I could just interrupt for a moment. I concur with everything that, or echo everything that Harmony just did. We appreciate your service if you are rotating off. And Harmony, thank you for serving as our chair. You have really taken it and run with it the way that it needed to. So we appreciate that.
Oh, I'm thrilled. So I'm not going to end the meeting without an ask, though. So if you are rotating off, or even if you're not, and you have some recommendations for stakeholders, representatives on the committee, could you please send those to Ms. Baxter, and folks here will reach out and add to our membership so we can keep the good work going. But unless there's any other last minute comments or thoughts from the audience, I will be happy to entertain a motion to adjourn, and we'll do that by acclamation as well.
Well, I'll do that.
Thank you, Mike. Is there a second for adjournment?
This is Shelley. I'll second.
Thank you so much. Is anyone opposed? Then I wish you all a wonderful summer and hope to see you at the CTE conference or the next meeting.
Thank you all very much.